against poverty. In his State of the Union address, the president had told the country he wanted not only to alleviate suffering, but to actually cure poverty. No American leader had ever taken on poverty in this way before. There wasn't even a real poverty office yet, so the new poverty czar worked from a suite at the Peace Corps, which he also headed. The focus of the author's book was the cycle of poverty in one region, Appalachia. The man had also seen poverty in the city where he grew up, St. Louis. In St. Louis, the poverty was in part caused by government plans gone wrong, as in the case of the bulldozing of streets people loved in the name of moving them into public housing slums they didn't love. America, the author thought, should invest billions to abolish poverty. It was incredible that America knew so much about poverty and had done so little. The state governments could not do this work. State governments were beholden to retrograde conservative legislatures. For systemic change, the author had come to believe there was no place to look except toward the federal government. When the author and the poverty chief met, they discussed the budget for a poverty program. The president was mooting the amount of $1 billion a year. The author couldn't help himself. He was frank. Only $1 billion? He personally hoped that America would pull together and, in a surge of sentiment, support, if not socialism, then at least a new version of Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal. The very name New Deal sounded so grand to young people. You could sell anything to them by invoking it. $1 billion sounded like nickels and dimes, the author told his host. "Oh, really?" the official answered dryly. "I don't know about you, but this is the first time I've spent $1 billion." Still, the poverty office head was impressed enough to invite the younger man to help out drafting the billion-dollar poverty law. The chance was too good to miss. The author set aside the socialism and put on a tie. He joined a number of other new hands, many of whom were also still camped out in the Peace Corps office. The poverty team included professors, government officials, and policy people, all producing memos for the new poverty law at assembly line speed. Their boss set a grueling pace. It was not unusual for the chief to ask for a memo at 10 in the evening and suggest that it be delivered later that night. "The man put Benzedrine in the air conditioning," one of the author's friends joked. The author worked on an employment proposal. Socialists and centrists could agree on one thing, that unemployment was the greatest source of poverty. Still, as he sat in the makeshift offices, the author kept returning to what he saw as the problem behind the problem, American capitalism. He and his friend took to concluding their memos with a half-serious line. "Of course, there is no real solution to the problem of poverty until we abolish the capitalist system." At one point, the author stopped censoring himself and wrote a few lines of what he actually felt. That the abolition of poverty would require a basic change in how resources are allocated. The boss actually took this bold call for redistribution to the president, who, the boss reported, proved remarkably friendly. The boss said that the president, a Roosevelt fan, told him that if serious economic redistribution was necessary to realize the long-delayed completion of the New Deal, then redistribution might be worth it. Nothing, though, came of the author's radical memo. The writer left the poverty team before the president signed the poverty bill. When the president handed out pens to those who had contributed to the poverty legislation, another staffer went through the line twice so he could collect an extra pen for the absent author. From afar, the author could see that the Democrats on the Hill and in the White House were indeed settling for the beginning of social democracy. Well, the author could tell himself, social democracy was the start. The story sounds like something that could happen today. But the author, a man named Michael Harrington, made his proposals to the White House in 1964. His book about poverty was a then-famous bestseller called The Other America. The boss who ribbed Harrington about a poverty budget was Sergeant Shriver, the brother-in-law of the late President John F. Kennedy. The president, whose poverty initiative Harrington briefly served, was Lyndon Johnson. The man who stood in line to collect a pen for his friend was Daniel Patrick Moynihan, both witness to and conspirator in 1960s policy, the same Moynihan who later became the legendary